like to call to order the Planning Commission for tonight, Monday, April 7th, 2025. Call this meeting to order. I'd like to start with an invocation. If you lead us off.
Yes, I'm glad to. Pray with me if you'd like to. Our dearest Father, our Creator and Sustainer of our lives, help us to remember that you keep us moving, breathing, you give us being, and we're thankful for that. We're thankful for this opportunity. I'm thankful for the Planning Commission, the work that they put in, the time they devote to these important issues that face the county as it grows. I pray in your guidance and your wisdom that you would lead them on the way toward good decisions, that you'd help staff to help them, and that this meeting would be guided by your wisdom and your love. I pray in your name. Amen.
Mr. Nix, could I get you to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have the minutes in front of us from March 3rd. Can we get approval of those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
And are there any changes or amendments we need to make to those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. Ms. Spicer, did you vote?
I did.
Okay. All right. We have no public comments for non-agenda items. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's move to commission member comments. Anything you guys want to say?
I'd like to thank the public for a good showing tonight.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Appreciate when the public participates in planning of their future.
I'd like to second that. It is nice to see a crowd. Any other comments? All right.
No comments from me.
James is where tonight?
He is on vacation.
Wonderful. Good for him.
Yes, good for him.
I am very glad that he is able to do that. Please put it in the minutes so we'll all know he was able to take a vacation. All right. Let's move straight into discussion then. This is a discussion regarding the 50-foot right-of-way requirement on private drives and private roads, which is found in the Roads and Bridges 26-2. Typically, when we start off, I go through a little bit of history of why we're here, why we're doing this. Then we've got some public comments to read, as well as some public comments from you guys to hear. And then we'll get into a discussion up here. Several years back, this issue was brought to the attention of the Planning Commission regarding the overreach of the county regarding right-of-way requirements on private roads and private drives. We've had several subsequent conversations in these planning meetings about the issue and have gone as far as to send changes to the ordinance to the Transportation Committee of County Council. At the time, the Transportation Committee asked that it come back so that we could hear from Roads and Bridges and the Fire Marshal, which the Planning Commission did a year or so back. While there was a good discussion and vote of approval, we've never pushed the issue to County Council. One, we have had more pressing issues at the time. And two, many of the citizens really didn't have an opportunity to truly inform themselves on the issue of what we were discussing. This is dealing with 26-2, and we actually have conversation in here of 26-3. So kind of goes to that we're really have been trying to inform the public of what we're talking about. The issue is more about bureaucratic policy and conflicting ordinance information rather than frequent injustices. Over the past year, the Planning Commission has worked hard and tried to correct some of these ordinances in conflict, and I believe that corrections in this one need to be made as well. While there's been good discussion in these past meetings, there's also been a tremendous amount of misunderstanding of the objective. And at the end of the day, this is a property rights and government overreach issue, along with simple conflicts in legal definitions. Through these past meetings, we've heard three main topics of concern, and I want to address those briefly since we have new commission members up here, to hopefully address some of the things we've heard. Three concerns were, why are we changing something that doesn't seem to be a problem? Another was, how will this affect safety on the roads? And the other one is just, they've said this just means more development. So why are we changing something that doesn't seem to be a problem? Over the past years, the Planning Commission has done a great job of identifying and discussing ordinance conflicts. Just because something doesn't make the headlines doesn't mean it's not a problem. And so while it appears small, we currently have a huge conflict in the definition between Chapter 26 and Chapter 32. Hopefully tonight's discussion will help clarify and finalize that. Here's one of those conflicts. In Chapter 32-12, definitions of private drive says services up to 3 residential lots. Chapter 26-2, line 1 says private drives service not more than 10 lots or dwellings. Well, you can have multiple dwellings on a lot, so there's a conflict right there. Is it 10 dwellings or is it 10 lots that we're talking about? So we're already dealing with conflicts that we need to clear up within the ordinance. Just so everybody knows, when you look at dwellings, dwelling is a building or a portion of a building with a separate kitchen or bathroom. So if anybody in the audience has a home and they have a basement with a kitchen and a bathroom, mother-in-law type suite, we might say, or on a ranch house with a separate area with its own separate kitchen and bathroom, that's 2 dwellings on that property as it stands already. So that's where that confusion can come in. So regarding public safety concerns, throughout Oconee County, there are hundreds of private drives and private roads. All roads in gated communities are private roads. But consider some of the neighborhoods without gates. Neighborhoods Beacon Shores, Harbor Oaks, The Summit, Waterford Point, Waterside Crossing have some of the best constructed roads in the entire county. And these are examples of neighborhoods that have private roads that have been built with less than a 50-foot right-of-way, which is what we're discussing tonight. The Waterford community, for example, has 39 lots accessible by private road, some by easement rather than right-of-way. But in each of these communities, the owners, the fire department, ambulances, etc., have had no problem over the last 20 years navigating the ingress or egress in these neighborhoods. So I want to make something real clear regarding safety. Private roads must get an encroachment permit from the South Carolina Department of Transportation. Private roads must be built to a minimum width of 20 feet of road surface, just like the minimum width for public roads. Private roads must have a vertical clearance of 13.5 feet, just like that of public roads, so that fire trucks and other emergency vehicles can safely travel. Private roads are to comply with the current fire regulation code, just like public roads. Private drives, private roads must allow at least 100 feet of sight distance for each 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, just like it's always been. And private roads must be constructed to a certain depth of the road surface material to be consistently stable for large weight vehicles. None of that has changed. All of these specifications are for consumer safety and part of the private roads and private drive standard. Lastly, the third item, it said cause more development. This has nothing to do with development tonight and everything to do with private property rights. The current regulations have existing conflicts in the definitions and penalize property owners, not the developer. Mr. Markovich, welcome. So tonight, we're going to be discussing whether current right-of-ways on private roads and drives is an overreach by county policy. Elise, would you bring up 26-2B2?
Twenty-six.
26-2B2. It's defining there a private drive. And under private drive, it describes the things that it serves. It serves no more than 10 lots or dwellings. And that it have a minimum of 50-foot right-of-way. That's 20 feet of pavement, just like public roads, and then there's a 15-foot requirement beyond that pavement for utilities, for other purposes. It's that item 2, that we're discussing. Can you move down to 26 under private roads? Right there, number 2. Also, that it have a road width of 50 feet. And it says serves a minimum of lots, doesn't say drives on there. Elise, now if you'll go to chapter 32, 212, the definitions section. If you can go to road right-of-way, because it's the right-of-way that we're discussing. Ours, go scroll, no, go up, that's, actually, there's another definition section, I believe.
Private road and private drive.
Yeah, private driveway, private drive, private road.
Yep. Let's see, one more space up, I believe. Because it talks about, under 32, it talks about the right-of-way means an easement or an easement within which
Taylor's right
utility
there.
installation.
This right here is road right of way.
Yep. For utility installation, utility maintenance, road construction, roadway maintenance shall occur according to the standards put forth in these regulations. So for public roads, this definition makes sense. It's perfectly reasonable for a 50-foot right-of-way containing 20 feet of pavement and 15 feet of additional shoulder on either side of a public road for installation of utilities, car breakdowns, continued maintenance. I mean, for an easy visual, if you're ever watched road repair work, you see all the asphalt trucks lined up on the road waiting for their turn to offload gravel. On a public road, you need that shoulder and that 15-foot right-of-way to keep every owner on the street from saying, "You're ruining my grass, get off my grass." But going back to the definition of public right-of-way, the last part refers to standards. It says shall occur according to the standards put forth in these regulations. If you go to 26, back over to chapter 26, we have to bounce around, unfortunately, for a lot of the definitions in here, but 26.3, section F, paragraph 7, right there, I believe F7. Says the entire right-of-way shall be cleared of all stumps, roots, bushes, and other objectionable material prior to grading roads. All trees, stumps, other vegetation shall be removed to a depth of 2 feet below subgrade. And then it finishes up with the entire right-of-way shall be graded. Again, for public roads, this is important because it's public transportation going out there. You have a car breakdown, you're going to need to be able to pull off to a shoulder, pull off to the side. We're talking about private drives. We're talking about the road accessing your private property. If you have a car breakdown, chances are you're going to walk to the house, get the tractor, and either drag the car in or go change the flat or whatever it might be. But I want to look at the current ordinance and how it affects actual property owners. Remember, currently you can have up to 3 dwellings on your private property without meeting the 50-foot right-of-way requirement. And again, a dwelling is defined in our ordinance as a portion of a building with a separate kitchen or bathroom. So real-world example, you have 30 acres where you've built your home. On the basement level or at the far end of your ranch-style house, you've added a place for your elderly parents to live. It's got its own entrance, got a little kitchen, got a small bedroom and a bathroom. You have 2 dwellings on that property. Teenagers who've gotten a little older, one of them's of age to move out, but not quite financially able to make it happen, so you clean up the space over the detached garage and you make a cute little apartment. You now have 3 dwellings. 3 dwellings is your maximum allowed, whether you have 4 acres or 400 acres, you can only put 3 dwellings on it unless you have more than 50-foot access to the main road. That's where there's an error in our ordinance. You just gotta hope that as those kids get older, one wants to come back home and you wanna sell off a part of that 100 acres that you have because you invested in it. You can't do it if you already have the house with a basement, with a separate kitchen and a detached garage. Heaven forbid you want a pool with a pool house, because if it's got a kitchen and a bathroom, it qualifies as a dwelling, and you can't do it. So if you would show us some slides, if we'll start with that slide 1. Here's some real examples of what's in Oconee County. This took about 5 minutes just looking out in the Fairplay area. 23-foot access. I should have written down the acreage on it. It's more than 2 acres. Slide 2. 34 feet of access to that acreage. Slide 3. 42 feet of access to that acreage. Now, this is not a great example because that's a pretty major power line. But in many cases of these farms, their power's coming from somewhere else completely different than down their drive. Flip to the next slide. This is a real life case of what happens. People have acreage. Their sister comes up and says, can I buy an acre off of your 25 acres? And they sell them something right up near the road like you see here. Their other sister or cousin or whoever says, can I have some acreage? And they sell them another half acre up here. But because they only allowed space for their driveway in 45 feet, they cannot build on their property beyond one structure, even if it's 200 acres, because they've already sold off and penalized themselves by pinching it there. Do you go to the next
Point of
slide?
information on that, though.
Yes, sir.
Unless they go to the BZA, right? They have to come to the BZA to get that.
They have to go to the BZA in order to get a variance to that 50-foot requirement,
Right.
as it's currently written. And we do bring that up again because I'd like to talk about that more, because people should not ever have to go in front of the BZA for something like that. If the next slide, please. The next slide here. 10 acres, 27-foot access. In fact, if you look just below it, there's already a house, maybe 2 structures that are also accessing that 27-foot access. So the guy with 10 acres, he might have the ability on his 27 acres to put 1 dwelling. Hope he never has grandkids or siblings that are kids that he needs to sell like that extra acreage off to, with only 27 feet of access. Next slide. Here's 24 acres with 48 feet of access. Again, under our current ordinance, that owner could not put more than 3 dwellings on that property. 24 acres that somebody made an investment in. The next slide, please. And here's one. In the back, that should say 12.5 instead of 2.5. That's 12.5 acres. But there's already 1, 2, 3 homes and a 4th lot already on that acreage. So while our ordinance kicked in what we think was 2013, and this may have been built prior to that, that person cannot put more than 1 dwelling, and they can't put that mother-in-law suite when they go to the building codes, because it violates our current ordinance. If a guy builds up in the very front lot, he wouldn't have the opportunity to build, except, again, unless it was subdivided prior to that date. In the next slide, please. This guy has 140 acres with 36 feet of road access. Their private property, they can't use it to the full extent that they could divide out for their kids, siblings, otherwise, because of our current restriction for private property. Next slide, please. Here's 146 acres. It's got a 32-foot pinch point and a 27-foot pinch point. 3 properties, 3 dwellings rather. Might be the same house. 3 dwellings, 146 acres, because of our current restriction on private property. Next slide. Slides, and that's it. Next, the point being is that we have real-world examples of how our current ordinance about private property rights are being disturbed. Has nothing to do with the safety, has everything to do with our current restriction against property owner. So, with that, hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity to the public. Let me read these two points. Again, we're talking about 26-2 and the definitions as they relate to 26-2 and 32. And we'll start with reading a couple of these. The first one, email from a Sharon Manning, says, "We oppose any action on ordinance 26-3. Sharon and Mike Manning." And we're not discussing 26-3, really. That's public property, public roads. The next one is from Ann Simpson. It says, "Do not amend ordinance 26-2. It doesn't make sense. Who benefits from the proposed change? I've given permission to all utilities to fix or install anything. What about fire hydrants or street lights? Or if there is water or a sewer pipe broken? It is the homeowner who's responsible to fix it, ? Please don't change the ordinance. It doesn't make sense, only complicates things." Hopefully the public is better informed after this explanation. Next person, Lucretia Morgan. For folks coming up, we're going to try to hold this to 4 to 5 minutes. If you need to go over a little bit, just give me a thumb. I'll hold this up when
Okay,
time's up.
all right. I've got some handouts. You want to just take one and pass it? Relates to the slides that were just shown, so you might want to take a good look at that. And here is mine. So there's no microphone here, or?
You're actually on sound.
Okay, so y'all can hear me. All right.
Everybody
Good.
should be able to hear you in the front and the back.
Okay. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and fellow citizens. My name is Lucretia Morgan, and I stand before you today to voice my strong opposition to the Planning Commission's proposal to eliminate the 50-foot right-of-way requirement on private roads and drives. This proposal is not only unnecessary, it's misleading, poorly substantiated, and potentially self-serving. Let's start with the basics. A 50-foot right-of-way isn't an arbitrary number. It exists for good reasons: public safety, access for emergency services, utility placement, long-term infrastructure, and proper traffic flow. Removing this requirement, in fact, invites future complications for property owners, local services, and the broader community. It undermines standards that have been in place to protect everyone, not just the few who stand to benefit from the change. Back in July 2022, this exact proposal was introduced by the Planning Commission Chairman, Mike Johnson. Today, it's being reintroduced by Commissioner Mickey Haney. But let's be honest, this is just the same idea recycled, and the justification remains as weak now as it was then. We're told this is for Farmer Joe, who wants to divide his property into more than 3 parcels for his family because of the 50-foot right-of-way requirement. That narrative might tug at some heartstrings, but let's look at the facts. The parcels presented to support this proposal are deceptive. The parcels that were just shown, I've researched every one of them. I've pulled plats. There's either the owner has adjacent property, or when I pull the plats, they're 50 foot on actual plat or greater. Like I said, there's deceptive. In most cases, the landowners already control adjacent parcels that do provide the required access. In some examples, we're told the access is under 50 feet, but I reviewed the actual plats, and in multiple instances, the access points are more than 50 feet wide. Feel free to conduct your own research. I've already done mine. The handouts I provided include the findings I came across. And I have more, but I didn't want to make a 40-page handout. So I asked, was this an oversight, or is it an intentional misinformation meant to sway decision makers? If it's the former, then someone failed to do their due diligence. If it's the latter, then it's a blatant attempt to mislead this commission and the public. Either way, we deserve better. We deserve transparency. let's talk about potential conflicts of interest. The chairman of this commission works for a realtor and developer. The commissioner who's promoting this proposal owns considerable property. That's not inherently wrong, but it does raise questions. Who really benefits from this change? Is this truly about Farmer Joe, or is he just a convenient cover story? Because when you look at the records from 2022 to present, how many variances have actually been submitted because of a 50-foot right-of-way requirement? Just one single case. You may have heard of it, Arrowhead Point. The same contiguous subdivision that Mr. Johnson's employer has been trying to access for over 3 years. Convenient, isn't it? If this proposal goes through and private road standards are relaxed, that project could automatically get the green light. 19 homes on a 20-foot wide road. Is that in the community's best interest? Or is it in someone's personal interest? And the plot thickens. Through a FOIA request, I obtained documentation showing that back in 2019, Mr. Johnson submitted a subdivision development request for 3 to 4 tiny homes. The planning commissioner at the time responded only 3 homes are allowed without a 50-foot right-of-way. That's not about Farmer Joe, and that's not about a struggling family trying to divide land for their kids. Doesn't that seem like someone trying to bend the rules for personal development again? This isn't about simplifying things for rural families. It's about paving the way, literally, for developers to bypass long-standing protections under the guise of helping the average landowner. If Farmer Joe has a legitimate case, let him take it to the Board of Zoning Appeals and ask for a variance. That's the process. That's the transparent and accountable way to handle it. But don't blow up a policy that affects our whole community just to benefit a select few. I urge this commission, do not let personal interests override public good. Do not use Farmer Joe as a smokescreen to pass something that only serves a handful of people, some of who sit on this very board. Let's preserve the integrity of our planning process and reject this proposal. And I also request that my presentation with my research, along with a copy of my verbal transcript, be included in the meeting minutes and backup materials. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we call the next one, because I was addressed personally, and I do want to correct some misinformation there, and that's what we were trying to correct in the beginning. Regarding my personal property and personal development, I knew what the ordinance was. I have the 50-foot right-of-way. Many people don't know that. So I could build a complete subdivision if I wanted
Why
to.
are you addressing this? Yeah, you never allowed that.
Right.
You never
I'm
done
sorry.
before.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure that we're clarifying the information because there's a lot of clear discussion here. So,
Beyond your property line.
what's that? Okay. Sherry Crisp?
Hello. Good evening. My name is Sherry Crisp. 42522 was the last time a variance was granted or even requested in Oconee County. Variance BA-21-011. It is very similar to what is being proposed here tonight. So no one has gone to the BZA in 3 years to request this, so why does it keep being brought up? The BZA would be who a landowner could come before if they need an exemption. I mean, 3 years, nobody's came up. I mean, is it really that pressing of a matter? On 8/1/22, this similar proposal came back to the planning commission and it was rejected. So my question is, what is the reason that this still keeps coming up?
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, I have to correct. And doing away with the 50-foot right-of-way only seems to be encouraging overdevelopment, in my opinion.
And the last one, Serena Richardson.
Hello, Planning Commission members. Some of you recognize me from back in April of 2022. My family has lived here for 5 generations, and I've seen a lot of the development and a lot of the things happen, and this is just crazy that this has come back up again, and I'm here to speak up against it. Basically, the same proposal was brought to us by Mr. Johnson in April of 2022. And we still don't get references to the parcel numbers. I don't understand that. She had to obviously do a lot of research to get that information. But sorry. So how do we know that these do really, obviously she's presented some information, you'll know a lot of those are just bogus and smokescreen. But, he's been the sole and only person to appear before the commission advocating the removal, of these two ordinances. And, we should be adding development limitations, controlling the way that we are developed. We don't wanna be Hilton Head. Our county's dying. There's almost the same number of kids in school when I graduated in 1988. We're developing for all these investments and things like that, and it's just crazy. You're just trying to add to that. Surrounding counties, Anderson, Greenville, Pickens, and Lawrence, they have 50-foot right-of-ways. Why are we trying to regress? And this presentation right here, this one, I think it was page 9. You blocked out the addresses so we couldn't see, but according to what I see, why can't they access from these other roads that go down to their property? So that didn't seem like a good example to me. And did any of these landowners come to the BZA to try to get a variance of any of these slides? I don't think so. The planning commission voted back in August of 2022 that they weren't gonna take any further action on this. So now y'all have some new members now. Y'all may want to go back and review all of those videos and notes and see some of the important information that was brought forward. And I think personal interest should not override the overall well-being of the county. I have almost 500 signatures from the last time that he tried to do this of people not wanting this to happen. And, you need to look back, especially 7/19/22 on Kyle Reed's presentation about the right-of-ways and the fundamentals of maintaining the roads and the importance with emergency vehicles, the fire trucks, ambulance, all that is very important. And yeah, if your car breaks down, you might can walk home, but what if it blocks the road? What if an ambulance can't get down to a neighbor while you're walking home to go get stuff to fix your car and the ambulance can't get there and they die? That could happen just as easily as Farmer Joe wanting to split his property. And if Farmer Joe wants to split his property, he goes to the BZA. I just hope that y'all will not do away with this and open up a big old can of worms for our county. I love our county. I want to see it developed in the right way. And the last 3 years that I've been coming and trying to watch meetings and things, I don't always get to come. But I want to see something, you do something to help develop in a controlled way, not take away restrictions. And just make it easier for that. I wish I could have had stuff a little bit more prepared, but unfortunately I've been caring for my mom, and it takes a little bit of time. But I appreciate your time, and I hope that you new members will really consider looking at all of that old information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, let's see if anybody else has got an open discussion on this real quick. And then I want to get Kyle up and, yes, sir.
Can I just drop in real quick?
Yes, sir.
Just so we have full contours of the discussion, the Planning and Economic Development Committee, which is a subcommittee of county council, has referred to the Planning Commission, and James Coley will bring it up during the next meeting. 3 issues that I think are related, or I know are related. One was for the Planning Commission to consider redefining private driveways such that they could be more than 3 units. Also to decrease setbacks, mainly the front setback, and also to redefine minor subdivisions. They have a definition, but then as far as a special treatment for minor subdivisions, it just says reserved. There's really nothing apart from saying the planning director can administratively approve it, but it's still the same process. So I just wanted to give a heads up on those 3 items. Mr. Coley will bring those back. I'm sure it'll be flavored by the discussion today because there's so much related, but I wanted to get those out there. Again, private driveway discussion in the future regarding increasing that from 3 units. Also, number 2, decreasing front setbacks. And number 3, really putting some more teeth and I guess a bit more architecture to the minor subdivision provisions so that folks who have want to develop something, 10 units or less, can do so without employing a professional engineer to make it a little more user-friendly. I just wanted to throw that out there. Of course, and I think you noted this too, private drives that were built prior to 2008 when these were put in place are grandfathered. So I don't know when the examples were constructed, but anything that was put in place, used, or under construction, or approved by 2008 is exempt.
Right, as far as subdivisions. But if it isn't 20-some-odd acre parcel that would then want to be subdivided by, again, four parcels, that would be a new subdivision of land, not,
Not be a new drive.
okay, so the access point doesn't matter?
We've had one, and it's gonna be very case-specific, fact-specific, so I'm not gonna be the county attorney who goes on record and says they're all, yeah, free pass, but a private drive that's established has the status of a private drive as if it meets these definitions, so that's grandfathering at its, at its essence, I guess. This way.
Okay, so is that, and that's for private drives, not for private roads?
Correct.
Okay. So just to make sure we understand, a private driveway has no right-of-way restriction, no right-of-way width, no building minimum requirement, things like that, and economic development is asking us to increase the number of homes beyond 3.
Just to consider it, yeah. They didn't say, hey, do this planning commission, but they said to consider it, that was an issue, that it's limiting, just akin to the examples you gave, that it limits folks from developing with ease.
So if we adjusted the 4 to 10, we would be accomplishing that already without giving people more freedom to just build whatever surface, whatever road width, et cetera.
I think if you were to, I think it would have the same net effect, if I understand your question.
Well,
Meaning
under
that
private,
If you're gonna increase private driveways to a definition of 9 or 10, without any standards, as driveways now, they don't carry any standards with them, then that would have the same effect of removing the drive restriction.
we would be more restrictive by removing the right-of-way beyond the pavement on a 20-foot wide drive than we would to take a driveway which is 12 feet wide or more and say there's no restriction if we just increase the number that could access a driveway.
I'm not sure I understand that question. So
So-
a driveway that's existing, that's 12 feet?
No, you're saying, if I understand correctly, you're saying that they've asked us to address private drives to allow more than 3 homes on a private
And
driveway.
Driveways carry no.
And a private driveway, currently, the only restriction is that it be 12 feet wide, at least. I think if there's anything at all, I think it's very minimal.
I look to my.
But there's no road depth, no following fire code, nothing like that.
No design standards shall apply to private driveways, but driveways must comply with applicable building and fire codes.
So fire code, I think, was where I got with the
That
12
might have
feet.
been where you, I think.
So economic development is asking us to relax the standards on the 4 to 10 beyond what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, and I put that out there just because I think it flavors this conversation. We're not amending the agenda, not expanding it, not trying to invite y'all to go there outside of what FOIA would permit. I just wanted to put that in your minds so you know that I know this is gonna come back. Mr. Coley, Planning Director, will be here, and so you can have a more, I guess, fulsome discussion, know that those issues are out there too.
More times for you guys to come back. I want to start a discussion up here real quick. I do want to talk about the BZA real fast before I forget, if that's okay. People talk about that the BZA, oh, you can just go in front of the BZA, that's a quick fix. I'm here to tell you, anybody who is not familiar with the BZA is not like planning. James says something that somebody doesn't agree with, and that person can get relief coming in front of our group to say, there's a misinterpretation by the director. Do you all have the same interpretation? If we do something wrong or don't go in agreement, people can go to county council and say, hey, we're having this issue. But you go in front of the BZA, that's a judiciary body. The relief there is not to county council. The relief there is the court system. So if you go in front of the BZA, you're bringing your attorney with you. You're bringing all your ducks in a row, because win or lose there, the next system is an appeal system within the court system. So people are spending spending money through that process. It's not just a, hey, can I go up in front of the BZA? So that's all I had about that.
Motion that we bring some of the experts in the room up.
Perfect.
But to go more in depth on this, because I've done some research on my own. But I need some clarity brought to us through them. Does anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second. All those in favor, say aye. Who would you like to bring up first?
I'd like to bring Kyle Reed up.
Thank you. For the record, the name's Kyle Reed, Oconee County Roads and Bridges.
So, how on these private drives,
Yes, sir.
do you have any interaction with them at all?
No purview over them, but a lot of interaction with them as far as people calling, generally, yeah.
Right, but you don't go out and service them, you can't go out and
No.
service them?
No,
Okay,
unless fire has an emergency and we go out there as far as getting public safety, or getting emergency management in.
and what is limiting you from going out and servicing those private drives?
Oh, it's private property. As far as the road itself or the driveway itself is private property. It is not a county-owned or maintained.
Is it written on the deeds?
If it's newer, and it's a private road, then there is language that says that it is included in private drive unless it's brought up to county,
So you really don't have
no dog in the fight.
no dog in the fight? Yeah. Have you read the IFC standards?
No, sir, no, that's the,
Okay. All right. That's pretty much all I have.
okay.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Is there any other questions from?
You said you get calls about interactions with public and private drives.
Yes.
What kind of things do you get asked, challenged on?
Somebody put up a gate, what can you do? Those kind of things, or can you come maintain it, the culvert's washed out, that kind of thing, so,
So these are from the residents or for
yes,
owners of the, okay.
yes.
How many, I'm just curious, because we're talking 20-foot of hard top and 50-foot right of way. And I know that the county has taken over a lot of roads from the state. And if we go back to the old state code of law, section 57-17510, it states that the roads at that time were at 16 foot. So how many of these roads will be taken over that have ditch to ditch, each do we have in the county?
The vast majority that we have that are older roads, they're not the, 90s and above the boom of the lakes and that kind of thing. The vast majority don't have right of way, or don't have right of way that is deeded or given. It's by prescription, which is what we maintain historically over time. However much we maintain, that's what we maintain.
And this may not be a question for you, this is probably for emergency response people, but in your length of time, have you ever known the response vehicles not to be able to go to an emergency on those roads because they were restricted by that width?
Restricted by the width as far as 16 foot?
Yes, sir.
No, not because of that, no, sir.
Thank you, Colin.
Mr. Reed, a number of times I've heard about Waterford Point, Waterford Farms, Waterside Crossing,
Yes.
the Summit. Is it fair to say that those are neighborhoods that have a combination of public and private roads in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you pull up? So I asked, your office and they gave me a really nice spreadsheet, I wanted to share it, that showed the roads in those Beacon Shore, Harbor Roads, the Summit, Waterside Crossings that the county takes care of. And then they're all 50 feet, 50-foot right-of-ways. Is it fair to say you don't take care of any of the private roads in those neighborhoods?
No, ma'am, we do not.
So just for future, I mean, this is a great resource, and I really appreciated the work that your office did for this. And it shows on the very, very right column, the name of the neighborhood, and then right next to it's the right of way. And then in the middle is the name of the street that the county services.
Yes, ma'am.
That's pretty accurate, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to thank you very much for that, and just maybe that clears up some of the confusion about what we do in those neighborhoods and what we can and can't do.
Yes, we no longer accept roads that do not have, like what you were talking about, so we no longer accept roads that don't have the 50-foot right of way.
So Waterside Crossing, didn't you, tell me about getting the right of ways from the neighborhoods. Didn't you just finish?
Yes, unfortunately, but the roads are still private. We're getting the deeds recorded because we got the last one that did. So it was a 40-foot easement, as Mr. Johnson had alluded to, it was on the private road. And we got 5 foot outside of that from their individual property owners to get the full 50 foot.
So that, are you through? So that brings up an interesting question. In those areas that was just brought up on that list, the 50-foot right-of-way, is it clear of all trees, debris, stumps, brush, flowers?
So, sorry, yeah, that's for construction, that's so, and I know it says tree stumps under 2 foot, but that is for construction, so you don't go out there, build it, pave it, all that other good stuff, and then a hole comes up in the road and whatever kind of thing. So removing deleterious material is just for construction of the road, as it's in the ordinance under construction.
It actually says in the ordinance for the entire 50 feet
Yes,
that those stumps and trees and everything be removed.
yes.
So, and is it for what reason? For safety, for?
For construction.
Prior to.
So you don't want somebody, the old way of doing it, and I'm not knocking anybody for doing it the old way, but yeah, whatever, you take everything down and you remove everything that you're having to fill or you're cutting or whatever else, and then, you burn the piles, and then whatever doesn't burn, you push in the hollers, and then you fill it over with material, and we find it years later.
So you all don't maintain on the sides of the roads, cut limbs and things like that at this point? It doesn't
yeah.
matter as far as the right-of-way if trees grow in that right-of-way then?
No, we do. Yeah, we do trim the right-of-ways.
How far back?
If we can get it, then 50 foot. If we can't get it, then we that is part of what we maintain. So on prescriptive right-of-way roads, generally, the extent of our maintenance is what we have mowed for all these years. So when you see a line of trees along the road and it's sheer to the line of trees, that's what we maintain to.
So in this case, in these areas that were brought up, you're not maintaining out and mowing out 50 feet?
If we need to, yes, for sight distance or things like that, then we do. A
Just
lot of
as
the
a whole.
subdivisions maintain their own and they mow their own and that kind of thing, so no, we don't. Decorative ornamentals, we don't go out there and take down everybody's crepe myrtles and stuff like that, no.
Would you
Or
say there's a lot
azaleas.
of those decorative ornamentals?
Oh, yeah.
In these developments that were just brought up?
Yes,
There is?
yes.
And how close are they to the 20-foot hard pack?
Generally, by rule of thumb, we try to keep them 2 foot off the back of curb.
Okay.
Generally, we try to keep them 2 foot off the back of curb.
So at that, they're pretty much using everything up to the hard pack?
Yes, as far as flowers, maintaining, that kind of thing, yes, they are using everything, but you get into curb and gutter, it changes your clear zone, so to speak. So we go by the AASHTO manual, what's in the ordinance, the geometric design of streets and highways. So, that clear zone is giving you guidance as far as what you need clear zone width for roads. And it, what right-of-way is and that kind of thing. So for us, if we need to for sight distance, then we take more. We're not just taking 2 foot. We're taking whatever we need to get people around. as evidenced by Stillwater in this last, couple weeks ago, that we went in there and mowed the right of way and cleared out where folks could see around the curves and that kind of thing. So we're going further back. Just generally driving and traveling down a road is 2 foot off the back of curb for clear zone width or whatever. But that doesn't encompass everything. That's not the whole of what we do. So it's not just as they're traveling this way and get into an obstacle and have to get off right here. It's what's ahead of them and what we try to keep clear for people to be able to see around curves, so somebody walking their dog doesn't get hit. You try to maintain 155 foot of stop and sight distance is what we try to maintain. Ditched roads, it changes. You're getting into, a 7 foot clear zone, that kind of thing that you're trying to keep everything out of for somebody to be able to correct without hitting a tree and, getting seriously injured, a tree or something else.
So, while we're on that, how else would you slow down traffic with road design?
$1 million question. How else would you slow down traffic
In a
with
subdivision,
road
what would
design?
you do to slow down traffic in a subdivision through road design?
So generally, you don't want to try to put things in the way to slow down traffic. You try to hit a sweet spot, so to speak, of what you're trying to design to. Generally, for what we do is 25. Now, people drive a lot faster than 25, but generally what we do is 25.
Well, let me ask the question
But if you're like I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask the question a different way. As the traffic speed is needed to increase, what do you do to increase or give the ability for that speed to
Yeah.
increase?
And sorry, I was going to answer the next one, with an urban setting. So urban areas, you close it in.
Close it in.
Yeah, you close it in.
And what else do you do?
Highway 11, you widen it out, or whatever else, or I-85, you widen it out and you make it all, you lay things back off the edge of the road.
So the narrower you make the road, the slower the traffic generally will go.
Yes,
And the more curves you put in, you can use them as features to slow traffic too.
to a point, yes.
Yeah.
You can get too far, you can push it too far, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then the other aspect of that is we're in hilly mountainous terrain with curvy roads just by the nature of the land that we have. So again, it's a sweet spot you try to hit. But you're talking, when you talk about those things, you can limit all the things that you're talking about, but you have somebody looking at the road and designing it. If you don't have somebody out there designing it, then you apply a broad standard, and that covers, the majority.
So in the South Carolina DOT, road design, I forgot the name.
Road design manual. Yep, you're
Road
right.
design.
I know what you're talking about, though, yeah. Well, that's the roadside access. I believe you're talking about how the road design manual.
Road design.
Right. Okay, yep.
Does it not mention about road width in there? Used as, at certain widths, certain speeds?
Yes, so it goes by, and generally it goes by the green book. So like you can go down to safely 480, 480T road or whatever else, 18 feet. You can go down in width. The reason that we're at 20 is fire code's 20. And we have a lot of 18-foot wide
Are
roads.
you done?
I think like.
Go ahead.
Back to Waterside Crossing. And this would be a question, I guess, what would the county do? So they have really strict architectural guidelines. And I printed them out, there's a lot of pages about preserving the trees. And there's a certain diameter of the trunk, you can't cut it down, there might be a fine. And then, there's also required practices for landscape screening, HVAC units, utility meters, transformers, and other equipment. And it says, electric utility transformer boxes must be screened from view from streets. Plans used as screening should be maintained by the lot owner so that elements being screened are accessible by service personnel. So when you see this pretty neighborhood, and it's mulch, and it's all these plants, but there might be a tree in the way. So, what supersedes the other? The county?
If it's in our right of way,
Do
we
you have to get permission
supersede.
to move it then, from them, because of their guidelines?
No.
Okay.
No. Now, if you do something that's within our rules but breaks theirs, then that's, that's on the person that owns the home. But if we control the right of way, then we control what we remove or what's in that right of way. We maintain it, so whatever we have is what we maintain. And however we see fit to do it. But yeah, that's a fine balancing act.
Kyle, thanks for coming tonight. I have one more question about Waterside Crossing. That neighborhood, and we've mentioned quite a few of the old Crescent communities having private roads within them, and I know that, that Waterside Crossing was one of the recent ones where it seemed like last year you all were looking at getting deeds of easement or deeds to that additional 5 feet.
Yes, sir.
Was that additional 5 feet because fire trucks couldn't get down that road? Was the additional 5 feet because ambulances couldn't get down that road, or because people were having problems? Why did the county need that extra 5 feet, or 10 feet actually, 5 feet on either side?
To maintain it.
To maintain it, to keep stuff out of it, or?
Yes, sir, to maintain the road to our standard.
But the road's 20 foot wide, and if there's already 10 feet on either side of that, the extra 5 feet that the county wanted was to maintain the road, or to maintain the trees, or to maintain the
It's all one.
culverts?
It's all one. The
All
road
the
and
above,
the
so-
culverts and the trees is one thing.
So removing it all 50 feet there, or having it
Not necessarily removing it all, but the road's a whole, and it's not just the surface, it's the drainage and everything else. I mean,
I guess because I asked, because many of these neighborhoods have been around for 20 years without incident, and we as the county have asked them to give up 5 more feet of their property to us as the county,
to have a county-maintained road district.
to have the county maintain roads.
It's a trade-off. If they want the county to maintain the roads, the county says, you gotta meet the standard.
Well, and we can't supersede.
So with the trees that are currently kind of blocking that view, or is it the county that's gonna go cut them, or is it Waterside Crossing that's gonna cut them?
It just depends. I mean, we have those conversations. I'm not sure which trees you're talking about that are blocking the.
Like 20.6, I think, that we pulled up.
No, I'm sorry. So 26.
No, I'm sorry, the slide 20,
Oh, okay.
20.6 is Waterside Crossing specifically.
What road you on?
It's in the curve, it's actually in the public section.
Okay.
I just wanted to see, because you were talking about examples of clear view, in the curve,
Right.
things like that.
So we wouldn't, I mean, it generally, we'll talk to somebody if we're gonna remove something, but to trim something, we go trim it, so they'll be going and trimming that. We just haven't had a call for that particular, and it may be misleading, you can still see 150 feet, and without being there, it's not.
Yeah, it's hard to tell
I'm
without
not
being there,
sure.
right.
But I mean, you can have, it looks like it would hit, at 13 and a half, 14 foot high, that kind of thing. So yeah, generally, that's something we would just go and cut that limb. Generally, it's one limb.
Gotcha. I was just looking, because that sidewalk is the width of a sidewalk, which is what, 4 feet, 5 feet?
Right. Yep.
And the distance from that sidewalk doubled is about where those trees are.
Well, but so it's over the traveled way, so it looks like we have cut that at one point in time, because you see how it tapers out over the top of the curb. The traveled way is not the curb, the traveled way is not the sidewalk for cars. It is the
I'm
road.
just wanting to make sure that trees aren't a problem beyond the 20 foot of pavement. Because when we have talked about this before, trees are kind of the issue from an emergency management standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And not specifically about that slide, and
Yeah.
not calling roads and bridges out
No,
or
no, no,
anything. I'm
you're
just
fine.
trying to figure out, we're talking about private roads, and on public roads with public transport back and forth and lots of travel, you've got all that issue. But we are talking about Farmer Joe and the 4th resident, and is that tree too close to the road? And according to our ordinance, it says, yes, you cannot have trees, stumps, roots, or anything within that 50 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry, no. So we can approve trees in the right of way.
Okay.
We have like the DOT has a tree manual. We can approve trees in the right of way. You can have trees in the right of way when you build a road. You can sit there and call it out on the plan. I'm gonna keep this one tree and I'm gonna grade and make sure everything ties down and however it's gonna be. What you can't have in there is deleterious material that's gonna cause settlement in the construction. You can't bury it. You
Bury it
can't-
down, yeah,
you
completely
gotta
understand.
remove stumps down 2 foot, that kind of thing.
And all that within that 20-foot right-of-way makes perfect sense. I just am still confused as to why we said we have to have an extra 5 feet from waterside crossing when for 20 years, their residents had never had a problem with water, never had a problem with drainage, had never had a problem with all these things. They were built to all the highest of standards, and yet we as the county said, but we are gonna take another 5 feet on either side of your road. Because it was our rule.
Our
Not that you
level of
did that, but it was just,
maintenance may be different than theirs. I mean, this is what we do every day. They, you know, again, it's the same thing of getting in conflict with pretty much every subdivision we go in. The expectations of the subdivision are very different than ours as far as what we maintain. So, you know, the 5 feet, I know seemed arbitrary to a point, but for us, it is, you know, my guys go out there and they know we have a uniform right of way and we have a uniform road and we try to keep things, you know, as uniform as we can. Sorry to say that 3 times, but that's what we're trying to do.
let me say one more thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry. And
No.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was interrupting Mr. Haney. That's what you try to do.
So we're gonna do what we do there in front, instead of, and same thing as what we do on Fire Tower Road, the same thing we do on whatever road we may be on, whether it
And-
be Galloway or whichever road it
And
is.
do you do that in subdivisions that have gates?
No, those are private, yeah.
Okay, so
No county roads are private, so.
what about private roads on private property? Do you maintain all
No,
those?
so any of these right-of-ways or easements, as it were, so it's either a right-of-way, no, right-of-way isn't an easement, but anyway, it's either a deeded right-of-way or a deeded easement that you're getting, for your road, but it's not county. The county does not take it, the county does not, you know, want it, the Roads and Bridges Department doesn't want, to that end unless council accepts it as a road that has been built to county standards.
And so as I remember reading the ordinance on 26, it says shall not, and that has to be on every survey that says shall not be turned over to the county. And then it has another period after the shall not.
Yeah.
It says, but it might
It might.
if you built it to public standards.
Never say never in this business.
Right.
yeah.
So doesn't the owner have the right then to build it one way, but if they ever think they're gonna turn it over, to build it another way? In other words, would they not have the right to build it at less than 50 feet if it's for their service in their own stuff and their own family
No.
behind their own gate?
No.
Or to build it to county standards?
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Because you were saying you don't maintain private. It's up to them to maintain private.
No, by the ordinance, they're not allowed to, and by, you know, anybody looking at it, they're not allowed to, and, you know, I know it's an owner here, but it may be somebody else behind them, it may be another generation, somebody else moves in, that kind of thing. So, so if you limit the right of way, you don't allow utilities in that smaller area, if you say it is just the hard top, or gravel as it were, cause it can be a gravel road. But if you do that, limit it to it, whatever else, for anybody to get a utility in there, they have to get permission from every one of those property owners going back to their property.
So if they have a well on their own property, they have to get permission from the neighbors to put a well from their property, well to their house?
No,
No.
public
So in other words, it's,
Sorry.
so it would be public utilities on public roads as opposed to private property. We're saying you might have to use public water. Well, we don't, we use a well. But you might have to use public water for that utility, or electricity. They might get electricity off of the back of their property rather than down the side of the road. The line may already come through the 30 acres in the back. They could draw from there. So we're telling them they have to have a utility easement when they may already have utilities completely in a different, accessible from a completely different place. Is that correct?
Well, that is part of the 50 foot is to allow utilities in that right of way. I mean, how they get them is whichever way they get it, but no, it's public utilities are gonna require right of way. Either running through that roadway or.
Or
having
running
their own.
somewhere else?
Yeah,
But
or
they don't have
having their
anything to do with the roadway. They have to do with the right-of-way law.
Right, well, they'll get their own, like, you're not gonna have a utility run out to you without them having the right of way to do so.
All I'm saying is they would have a right-of-way, but it has nothing to do with the road.
Right.
If they need to get the right-of-way by the road, then they would definitely want to make sure that it's there.
Right.
But if they're getting their electrical right-of-way from somewhere else on the property,
Sure.
it doesn't have anything to do with the road. So the utilities don't actually apply to the road. The utilities apply to the utilities.
It just gives a way for the utilities to run, short of having to run it through somebody else's property and have their permission, and if they don't give it, you ain't getting it.
Right.
Yeah,
But if you're giving it to yourself, then you would do that.
yeah.
So, Mr. Haney, hold on, Mr. Haney's up
I'm
next,
sorry.
sorry, and then,
So for clarification
Yes, sir.
of the reason you needed the additional 5 feet on the previous discussion is because you had to hold to the standards, the ordinance.
Yes, exactly, yep.
And I just want to clarify that. Now, just another clarification for me. So you're stating that the right-of-way, the county right-of-ways that we have, we're fine with Blue Ridge Electric coming in and using those right-of-ways as access to properties that do not have right-of-ways for their power?
As long as I have the right to give it, so prescriptive, we have no and I say the county, sorry. The county has the right to give it, so prescriptive, we have no subsurface rights. So either they have to hang on their own pole or they have to have their own easement to get to where they're going. So prescriptive roads, we can't give subsurface rights. All we can tell them is put it back like you found it kind of thing, on the surface of the road. But if we have right of way, then yes, it is in that easement or in that, easement or right of way deed that, we have the right to run utilities through the right of way.
And I.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, go ahead, wait.
Are you done?
Are you done?
Well, I just wanted to thank you, a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Hopefully. has
We
cleared up
appreciate you
things.
doing what
Yeah,
you're doing.
thank you.
Yes.
50 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
It comes because now when the driveway turns to a drive and is servicing 4 to 10 dwellings,
Yes.
and then the drive is 11 plus, it could be 1100, it could be 11, don't know.
Road.
But it's
Yes, ma'am.
because
Road
now
would
it's
be.
classified as a local road, and that's where the 50 feet right away comes in. It's not arbitrary numbers that the county's made up, it's from a standard
No, it's
from the
pretty
state,
standard.
isn't it?
I mean, it's pretty standard. Like I said, the DOT's 66 now, but the DOT will have a living kind of right of way kind of deal, depending on what they need. But they have, however many surveyors and engineers on staff and that kind of thing. But we define it as 50 because there's times that you don't want to get much more outside of it. So some of the subdivisions on the lakes, they're running pipes from the catch basins all the way down to the lake. And, that's hanging off the side of a cliff or whatever. So we don't go down there. We have our 50 feet and that's what we maintain.
But the 50 feet also, doesn't it have to do with access points also to a bigger room?
Does the 50 feet have to do with access points to
Yeah,
it?
if your drive is turning into, if your driveway's turning into a drive or the drive is turning into a public road, you need more access points, that's why you need the 50 feet.
I mean, it could, but the kind of the deal with it is, you've got 20 foot of road and then you've got drainage that you need to have, along this road, and then utilities working in there, that kind of thing. So so anybody can go out there and grade it however they want to. The onus is not, having to have it designed or whatever to have a drive. All it is to have a way for the folks that are gonna be back in there to get to their properties or to run utilities to their properties or whatever it may be. So road's a different animal than drive completely.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
We bring up, I'm sorry?
I just told Kyle, thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate you being here. Chief Chris Smith. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Smith, and I'm the Oconee County Fire Chief. Thank y'all for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you for coming. Chief, the International Fire Code, particularly to the 503.2.1, the standards, are you familiar with that?
I got my fire marshal here with me, Mike Clint Livingston. He also has the International Fire Code book with him.
You get to come up as well.
Fire Code book with him. So if you want to ask code questions, we'll bring him up.
Okay.
He knows the code.
So my question is, that standard, I've read through that book, and all that deals with public roads.
Yes, sir.
And when I looked for private roads in that book, it actually sends me over to wetlands and urban development standards.
There's not a definition of a private road in this book.
Exactly right. But in that book, what is the standard requirement for the width and height for y'all on those type of roads?
Go ahead. It's in Appendix D.
Well, Appendix D is part of it. Also in 503, it says 20-foot wide, 13 feet 6 inches,
Yes, sir.
which would be the height. So in Appendix D, there's also a clause that says where there's a hydrant, we can go up to 26 feet wide because we need to be able to get off the side of the road so we don't get by people driving the road.
And,
Also,
That-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Also, if the drive is over hundred and fifty feet, then there has to be a cul-de-sac, a Y, or a hammerhead intersection for the apparatus to be able to turn around and get back out.
So with that, a lot of y'all already know, the county runs on a water shuttle. So that is where that becomes important when we have to move water with a tanker. So that, just to explain that a little bit, why we need to be able to turn around and pass.
So my question is, where's your standard for private roads?
There is not one in this book as far as private road.
Okay. So would you agree that adhering to the 20-foot hard pack, 13.5-foot tall would get you what you need?
As far as access on a highway, my concern, and the reason I'm here tonight, is what can happen in the right-of-way when you take that right-of-way away. Somebody could put up a fence, somebody could put a building right up against the road. That may prevent us from even getting off our fire truck. If we can get off our fire truck, it may prevent us from being able to pull our cross lays off, which are 200-foot long. We open up compartment doors of 2.5, 3 feet wide. The majority of the county is unhydrated. Chief Livingston just spoke about water shuttle. That being the case, we have to put a dump tank beside a fire truck, which takes up another 10 foot. So if we can't get that truck over to the side of the road and the right of way and set that dump tank up so other trucks can bring and haul us water, may not be able to put out the fire. We may not be able to get our ground ladders off the side of the truck. So if Farmer Joe lives in a 3-story house, we may not be able to quickly access our ladders to get to an upper story floor if there was somebody trapped. So having those right-of-ways gives us access, not just the roadway for the truck to sit on, but to get our stuff on and off the truck for another truck to pass us.
In a safe area as well,
Yes.
for our guys to be off the side of the road to work.
Fire trucks are 100 inches wide, and then you add the mirrors, you open up those 2 or 3 foot doors. You try to take another truck, another instance, the wildfires we just had. You got one truck trying to protect this piece of property, and another truck trying to get back to the back part of the property where the mother-in-law suite is, may not can get by there, if you don't have enough access or right-of-way, because they might put fences up there. That's my concern, is what can happen in the right-of-way when you take that right-of-way away. They can put the fences, the buildings, and all that right up against the roadway.
They being who can put up the fence, right up?
Whoever, the property owners, if right now, if there's a right-of-way, they can't do some of these things in that right-of-way.
But they can't do that because of other ordinances, not because of the road ordinance.
Right.
That's correct.
So the road ordinance has nothing to do with
I'm talking about
putting
the
up buildings
right-of-way.
next to the
I'm
road.
talking about the right-of-way. Giving up that right-of-way allows the property owners to do more things in that right-of-way that may prevent us from being able to do what we need to do.
So not buildings, but trees maybe. So
Absolutely.
buildings don't apply because buildings are a completely different ordinance. But
Fences.
trees, for example, or
Okay.
fences might
That's right.
apply
That's
to
right.
something like
That's
that.
right.
So I have a question. There was a lot of mighty ifs in there. And the forest fires, we don't have those that frequently either. When would you not pull off of the shoulder of the road? With that, how much that truck weigh?
40-something thousand pounds for a fire truck.
40,000 pounds. So, let's say you're up on a gravel road, Farmer John, again, as we're talking about Farmer John today. Would you pull that truck off into his field?
Just depends.
On
Not
what?
today.
Not
Not
today.
today.
Not today, right?
Not today.
So there are times that you're gonna shut down that road, correct?
Yeah.
How often y'all shut down those roads during fires?
A good bit of the time we have to because of the width of space we take on scene.
So it just makes sense to shut down the road anyway.
Right, that's my concern with fences or other things that could be in that right of way, if you do away with right of way, not being able to get on that shoulder so that we could still have things going on. Even though the road may be shut down, we still got operations going on. If we got a hydrant, just the bend to get in the truck is another
Right.
3 or 4 foot.
But roads with hydrants fall under a whole different standard, and they give you the additional 6 foot of width. You know, that's all different.
But I'm talking private roadways, not necessarily private driveways, Stone Pond. Quite a number of homes in Stone Pond with hydrants, so that is a private road, not maintained by the county.
Right.
So that's kind of the standard I'm talking about.
Do y'all have homes in Stone Pond that you can't access, that you can't get to?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Have they built stuff to a standard that caused that to not be the case?
I don't know.
I know in Waterside Crossing that y'all actually had a fire down in one of those private road sections, and they've got pictures of 3 fire trucks in the cul-de-sac. So it was good that in that private road, that the road surface was still built to
That's right.
a public standard, and that's not being changed here.
Right.
Several years ago, or a couple years back, actually, Scott Crime, he had mentioned, we were talking about the right-of-way stuff, and he said he really would like to see 5 feet on either side of the pavement. In other words, a 30-foot right-of-way rather than a 50-foot right-of-way, from a standpoint of making sure that trees could be cut back. Is that kind of your thought process as well?
I don't know that 5 foot necessarily would give us enough room. I don't know. It all depends on the circumstances and what's there. You know, a fence 5 foot away may not give us enough room to get a 24-foot ladder off of the side of the truck up this high. So, you know, that's.
So trees and fences and things like that are an issue.
They have been, yes, before.
Yes.
We really need to go back to Waterside Crossing and look at cutting down some of these trees on
Yes,
the.
yes, but now it's some of that stuff pre-2008 that he was talking about, that's already there pre-existing that was grandfathered. So, you know, that's another thing, but we're left to deal with it, whatever it is, either grandfathered or whatever, we have to figure out a way.
I got a question. So why in the International Park Code, what we're supposed to be adhering to, is it only giving you 20-foot hardback? Saying that's all that's required.
That's right. That's for the truck to sit on and drive on.
So it also says that's the minimum standard.
Right.
That we have the ability to, if we have a subdivision go in, if we go down there and say, hey, this turn is too sharp or whatever it is, we have the ability to say, hey, y'all need to make this portion wider, make it a roll curb so it's weight bearing or whatever. But that doesn't apply to private driveways.
Right, it doesn't apply to private drives, but that, also in that, International, Fire Code book, it calls out what the cul-de-sac should be.
We go with 90 feet, which this actually says 96 feet. So we actually are less stringent on that because we know our fire trucks can turn around a 45-foot radius.
And have y'all ever had a chance, or not a chance, have y'all ever had a issue where you could not respond to a fire because the road was too narrow?
Yes.
You have,
On private driveways, we have.
on private driveways.
Is that a driveway or the drive?
Private drive,
Drive?
I guess is
Okay.
what it would be. It's personal residence, so there's several of those that we cannot necessarily get into.
So
which
let me stop. When we talk about drives, we're saying something that services 4 to 10 homes, and a driveway is something that services 1 to
Okay,
3.
terminology wise, it would be a driveway, yes.
Driveway, okay.
I'm not
We don't
aware
have,
of any private
unfortunately-
drive that would necessarily, now, on a 16-foot road, we would have to have that little bit we could get over because obviously the truck's 9.5 foot wide, so we would have to have that little bit to get around. That would be,
So real quick question while y'all are here, because we may not have you necessarily back for the other, but we had heard that the council had asked us to review private driveways to increase the standard on driveways from 3 homes, maybe to more homes. And what they're saying here is that driveways the fact that there's no restriction whatsoever as far as the size of the road or the size of the pavement like there is on private drives, that could potentially cause an issue. That 20-foot wide of pavement surface is at minimum is important.
it's not necessarily pavement, it's hard packed, they can weight bear, so that could be gravel, it could be whatever. I don't know that 20-foot wide and a single drive down somebody's personal driveway would be what I would say, but, 14-foot wide one way would probably be sufficient kind of thing. Because if you swing in a truck, you need more than 12 really, if they got a sharp turn or something like that in it.
Actually, I think it goes in that, call out,
it
it
does have a
actually
section,
discuss
yes.
about width of the road and sharp turns.
Yep.
So let me ask you this, if we was to revamp our ordinance so that it took into consideration everything in that book dealing with private drives and private roads. And might as well do, would you be able to fight fires as you are with the 50-foot? Would there be a issue where you would not be able to fight the fire, let them go that route?
I don't know that I can answer that, with confidence, just, it all depends on the situation.
Right.
It all depends on the situation. Our only concern is having access to the property and life safety in the time of emergency, and whatever that may be. Yeah, we don't have a lot of wildfires, but we have had a really dry spring, and it's been crazy the last few weeks, and anything can happen. So, we just gotta be able to have access to that, and provide that protection to the property owners and the citizens that live there.
Yeah, we're all for people having their personal rights to do whatever they want to on their property. Just, we need to be able to give them the best service we can provide in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking, does the International Fire Code, what's written in that book, does it give you what you need?
For private roads.
Well, for the public roads,
For public roads,
does it give you what you need?
for public roads, I believe we do.
With the 20-foot of hard pack, 13.5,
Yes, with a few exceptions,
Foot
sharp turns,
high.
that kind of thing, yes, sir.
and with the sharp turn, figures and crap.
Because that don't address right away.
No, this does not address the right of way at
Yeah,
all.
so that don't
Yeah,
address right.
there's nothing about right of way in there.
It only addresses, the fire code really is just for commercial buildings or residential subdivisions, really. It's more than one or two family dwellings.
That's right.
It doesn't address anything private residence.
Residential, no.
Like I said, y'all.
Other questions, gentlemen?
Yeah, I got a question. I think Joe's probably got the same question. 50 feet right of way for private drives. What are we looking to change it to anyway? And what's the
I'm-
proposal?
My proposal is to take it to the 20-foot hard pack, 13.5 foot high. That way, it's left up to the property owner to keep that area clear for them. And the property owner can have their flowers, their trees, whatever they want along the side, as long as it does not infringe in that rectangle. That way, we're not restricting, we're not taking something away from the private property owner that's not being used by the government.
So we're looking at giving back the 15 feet on both sides
Yes.
to the property owner. So I know the last time we discussed this, I know, we all know about the Johns Marine history and all that stuff. And I know this issue came up as a result of that. So I think Kyle talked about, if we take away all that right away, he doesn't have the access he needs to,
He does not maintain them roads.
well, okay, all right.
They'd be allowed to put fences and stuff in the right of way?
They would be
Like
allowed,
flowers.
well, it wouldn't be a right of way.
Well,
I mean, always.
So in other words, you would have your 20-foot hard pack, you'd have your 13.5 foot high clearance, because that's what's called out in the
Well,
international.
they
Fire Code.
might, I mean,
So
if
if
the
they
property
put
owner cuts it, right?
If they put a fence, though, it absolutely may hinder what we do.
Well, so would a tree, right?
Good.
Or bushes.
Yeah, but you got one tree, not a whole fence all the way down the side of the roadway. So I can pull up a little bit and get out of that tree's way or stop short of that tree, but I can't do that with a fence all the way down the side of the roadway. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, and a lot of these rural roads have pretty good sized ditch that you're not gonna pull across.
That's right.
So there,
But I can stretch hose across that ditch. I'm not gonna stretch hose across that fence.
Not efficiently. All right, so one more question, and this is, so I also heard Kyle say, it is a private drive, so the county doesn't maintain it. So only when it's built is this requirement to clear out the 15 feet on each side. They say it grows back up and nobody does anything about it, right? So
No, that's not the case. not according to the ordinance.
Well, the county has a say, but they say they don't enforce it.
No, they don't maintain the private drives. You're right about that.
So,
But you technically cannot do anything with that 15 foot on your side.
Say that again.
But it's obvious they're doing it.
Yes, it's obvious they're doing it, and that's what we're saying. Instead of acting like we're not doing it, let's go ahead and give the property that we've taken away from the citizens back to them, so they're legally doing it and not breaking the ordinance.
What we're doing in appearance is that we are saying selectively, okay, we're penalizing you, but we haven't done anything over here. Or we're penalizing this one, but we haven't done anything over there. And we're not uniformly adhering to this or not adhering to this. In other words, it says you gotta keep it clear, but if we don't keep it clear,
and
that's okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but also, back on the Johns Marine issue, they went to the BZA and they were asking for what, 25 feet? Which is 20 feet plus 2.5 on each side. Is that what they asked for?
Who's that, the
Developer for Arrowhead
developer,
Point.
the owner? Gosh, I don't remember. 30 or 32? I don't remember what it was.
They asked for 18.2.
Mr. Reed had a question.
18.2
Yes,
feet
sir.
on either side.
They only have 31.9. They asked for 18.2 variance.
31 point, so they asked for, okay, I got you, 31.9. So they asked to reduce down from 50 down to 31 point something.
31-foot entrance. Mr. Root, you had a statement?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted, just as a point of clarification, for most easements, for the county easements, if it's coming into the public road system, and in 30 years of doing this, I don't know that I've seen a real subdivision have right-of-way easements that didn't contain this language. Essentially, that if you're gonna put up, gardening, trees, vegetation, anything that's gonna be within the right-of-way, right? So we've got the easement premises, that's 50 foot, say. The right-of-way is that whole thing for, whatever the person who holds it, the county in this case, can do. The traveling surface is what we're talking about, is just 20 feet. County's easement, pretty much every private easement I've read that I can recall will say, if you're gonna put up a tree, if you're gonna put up something within the right-of-way area, obviously not on the traveling surface, but outside of it, you're essentially doing so at your own risk, peril, whatever. You can do it, but we can take it down, and you're gonna have to pay us for it. We're gonna take it down if there's a safety issue, or if we have to trim a tree, or if this tree has grown to such an extent or rooted out into the road or something that causes an issue. So it's not that they can't do it with most easements, it's just that they do, and it's subject to being removed. Just like, when I was in Charleston, we had a big case of the city of Charleston, county of Charleston, where they wanted to widen what used to be a rural road, became a highway, and DOT had the right-of-way, just, they get the right-of-way they need, and they ended up expanding it right to people's front doors. I mean, it was kind of egregious, but the right-of-way being there allowed that to happen, and people were on notice that that was gonna happen. It didn't happen by eminent domain, which would have been worse.
So the key point I picked up on was if the county puts it down, they can charge you for, okay. So there is some cost and damages, I guess.
Yeah, correctly. If you allow something to grow within the right-of-way, since you're taking the risk that this could be a hazard, I guess for lack of a better term, and then the county could take it down. Likewise, in any of these subdivisions, I've read a number of their easements have similar language, if they don't have a prohibition outright. I just wanted to make that part clear if it wasn't.
Do we have more questions? Gentlemen, thank you so much.
For your time.
We appreciate all the.
Mr. Reed raised his.
Oh, Mr. Reed, you want to come back up? Is it okay if he comes back up?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, but point of clarification would be, so take away county for public and then just put in everybody that lives along the road for private.
Say that again?
Take away the county for a public easement, so we hold the public easement along the county road. Everybody that lives along that road, or everybody that's been given that right along that road, the private road, are the people that take the county's place. You see what I'm saying? They're the ones that would be going through maintaining, they're the ones that would be moving the fences out of the way if they didn't like it, whatever it may be. But they'd be the ones that are responsible for that, if 50-foot right away.
Correct.
Just wanna make sure that that's, sorry.
So does the county, is there an example where the county has, I get we're making people lawbreakers and I don't like that, but has the county ever, enforced a situation or penalized a person for not clearing a right of way on a private drive or a private road? Did you know
No,
of?
so it's not required on a private drive. None of that's required. It's only required on private roads, but no. No, now, their engineer is supposed to check it and make sure that the roads are constructed to county standards, but no, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank y'all for.
Thank you. Thank you.
We call Mr. Markovich.
I'll second that. If you're making a motion to
I'll
call
make a
Mr.
motion to
Marshall,
call
I'll second it.
Mr. Markovich.
All those in favor of Mr. Markovich getting able to speak, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Thank you. Whoa, what a quagmire. It's been interesting to listen. I had planned on getting here early enough to speak, but things happen. Anyway, I'm glad I got a chance to hear most of this discussion prior to my comments. One that came up was about our private roads that are already existing, like in Waterside Crossings, other subdivisions like that. It's really kind of interesting because I know why there's private roads there. Because the minimum lot size at the time that those subdivisions were created, in order to get the lot counts that they needed and keep minimum lot size the way they were, they had to reduce the road frontage going through there. So my question is for these people that are in these waterfront subdivisions that all of a sudden now want to become public roads and they're gonna give an easement, did that lot just all of a sudden become bigger? How in the world are they giving up the extra footage and not meeting the minimum lot size that was required when the subdivision was built? That's a legal quagmire right there. The other thing is when I hear people talking about variances being granted by the BZA on roads, you're blowing my mind here, okay? The roads don't come under the zoning ordinance, period. When the road ordinances and everything were first created, and the Comprehensive Planning Act came along, the roads, the subdivision ordinances, the zoning, they were all under one umbrella. And then they decided, no, we didn't want roads in there. So they pulled the roads out and they put it in its own chapter, chapter 26. It's not a part of the zoning ordinance. Pulled out subdivision ordinance in its own chapter, chapter 32.
Chairman, may I address the speaker?
Yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, though, the Board of Zoning Appeals has authority to grant relief from all ordinances, not just the zoning ordinance. Is that not correct?
No. And David and I probably differ slightly on some of this. There's jurisdictions that the state law requires jurisdictions.
I mean, really, if that's the case, then Arrowhead Point, they shouldn't have had a BZA meeting and granted them relief, correct?
I don't disagree with that, but if that law wasn't challenged, you can only, the judge can only rule on what's being challenged. If that wasn't challenged, he's not gonna rule on it. Anyway, the Board of Zoning Appeals has jurisdiction over zoning issues. When it comes to, when the subdivision ordinances were created, and it still is the case, if you go into state law, Comprehensive Planning Act, this body right here, the Planning Commission has jurisdiction over the subdivision ordinances, not the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, I'm not saying that things don't get skewed and things end up going to the Board of Zoning Appeals when they shouldn't. They do, but again, it all comes down, it's jurisdiction, but it all comes down to what's being challenged. And if nobody challenges the fact that somebody's going to the Board of Zoning Appeals with something that should be going to you, you are also a judiciary body. And it's up to the planning commission to rule on things that have to do with the subdivision ordinance.
We are not
Oh, yes,
a
you are.
quasi-judicial body. The BZA is, we are an advisory body. We have no judicial powers whatsoever.
State law says
And
different.
not for Oconee County, it's different for different counties, but not for us.
Mr. Markovich, I'm gonna ask you to wrap it up.
Yeah. I guess that, I am totally in favor of private roads being totally private. As most of you know, when that thing got inserted in year 2008, and we had the change, that all became it came about because of a lawsuit that I and the home builders had against the county. I didn't agree with it then. I still don't agree with it. Private property is private, period. And I just don't think that, the county needs to be in that battle. That's all. Yes, sir.
Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
So during that lawsuit,
Yes, sir.
why was the private roads included under the same standards as the public roads?
That's good.
What was the reason given to you?
The reason it had nothing to do with safety, first of all. The reason given to me was because the county was worried about having to acquire some of these private roads eventually. And they said they wanted, but they couldn't do it if they didn't already meet the standard. So the county said, we want all roads to have to meet that county standard in case we have to take them over. And that was the main and sole reason. And a lot of it goes back to, a long time ago, before the War of the Roadses, there were a lot of developments that got built, and the roads ended up getting accepted, but there were really more private roads, and then all the people there raised Cain and wanted to become a public, and the county was getting caught short on that. I understand that. But that was not the case in 2008 at all. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions? Because we need to get on with this. Thank you very much. For a lot of the public that may not be aware, going back even beyond that time, county administrators, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Root, county administrator was not a hired position, it was an elected position here. And many of those elections ran on, I'll pave your road if you'll vote for me. And so it became a situation where private drives and private roads, the county started having to maintain. And that was one of the original issues of why that was started happening. Yes, sir.
In order to be fair to the public, we made a motion that allow Mr. Markovich to speak. I think I'd like to make a motion that if anybody else wants to speak on this matter, that they're allowed to speak.
I'll second that motion. I'll second that. All those in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye. It was unanimous.
I don't know if there's anybody else, but.
Is there anyone else in the audience after hearing what we've heard that would like to speak? Here and then here. Please come up and state your name.
And the motion would be for a normal 5-minute limit.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm Perry Smith. I would just like to say, I have 30 acres and I don't want anybody telling me what to do on my own property. If I want to if my 3 children want to be able to build a house down my driveway, I want them to be able to do it without having to turn my property over to the county. I think that's wrong. I have 3 children, I have 30 acres, and if I want them to be down there where I'm at, then I should be able to have that happen for me. Okay, it's none of anybody else's business in this county what I do on my own property. I bought it, I paid for it, it's none of your business. So personal property rights, that's the essence of being a dang American, owning freaking property. Okay, we don't need people telling us what to do with our own property. That's all I gotta say. It's my property. Leave it alone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask that the 2 gentlemen that are, or whoever else is gonna speak, they write their name on the sign-up sheet? I just wanna make sure that I have everybody's names spelled correctly.
All right there.
Pierce.
Kyle's gonna get it if, we'll leave it right up here on the corner of the table if both
I
of
was
you
filling
just.
it out for him. There you go.
Yes, sir. If you would state your name, and then when you get ready to leave, if you'd sign it right there.
My name is John Richardson, and I don't have a pen, so. You know, I just listening to all this, and the industry I worked in over 45 years, we had a standard. If we were gonna make a change to something, for whatever reason, we needed to clearly understand what the basis of that design, set point, policy, procedure, or whatever it was, before we could make that change. We need to clearly understand the basis for it, and then do the analysis necessary to assure it was okay to make that change, because the conditions that established it in the first place no longer existed. What I heard tonight is, it wasn't clear to me that anybody really truly understood what the basis of that 50-foot was. I mean, we talked a lot about for this, for that, for this, but it was established, and it had a good reason for being established. So why are we, what's the basis and analysis for changing it, and the conditions that existed to establish that standard in the first place? Do they still exist, or don't they exist? I don't know. Seems to me that's pretty clear.
Thank you. All right.
We got one more. You got one more right
Oh,
there?
one more, yes, sir.
Maybe two.
My name is Doug Cooper, and to echo a little bit about John and the other gentlemen have said, I think there's a couple of different issues here in my mind. I'll fully support, if that man owns 30 acres and he's got 4 or 5 kids and they want to break it up and have everybody in the family living there, he's got every right to do that. And if he chooses not to have a wide enough road for fire department, whatever, he puts his own family at risk. I don't think there's the same standard if someone wants to buy his property and put 10 units in there, then sell it and develop it to 10 different families that are buying into our county, our communities. I think that's an entirely different proposition for that piece of property. And I fully support his right to do what he needs, but if you're gonna create subdivisions, I'm president of a subdivision, and private roads are a developer's tool to get more lots. They'll tell you that, you'll see it, that's how they did it. So they're walking away with millions, and there's risks that the people that buy those lots are eat, because we're catered to developers. He has the right to do with that property he wants. I won't support, and I don't believe this county should support developers coming in from anywhere and saying, I'm gonna buy up his property because I can sneak 7 or 8 starter homes in there and just put this one road up through here. That is not the type of planning this county needs. But again, I think it's multiple issues to Mr. Richardson's comments. You know, it started for this way, and it was a really good reason, but we're not really sure what that is. Now we want to go back this way, and we think we got a really good reason, but what does that do for the other scenario, for that same piece of property? And I don't, you know, envy you having to wrestle with that, because it needs to be enforceable, accountable, and fair. But I think you need to look at it with no absolute glasses. It's not all Farmer Bill, and it's not all developer. There's gotta be a way that both people play. So maybe it's somebody's grandfather has the right to do whatever he wants, but if that property changes hands, you're under a new set of guidelines. But thank you for your efforts, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Was there anybody else? No? Okay. So, had a lot of discussion tonight. This, again, isn't the first time. We clearly had a discussion in '22. I think we had a discussion in '23. It was brought up again in '24 to discuss it in '25. So, again, nothing new. We have talked about several different points within there. One, just our clear definition difference, and I want to go back to that because there's a lot of people that said, why are we even having a conversation? A lot of people said we were having conversations that were different, but I want everybody to go back to 26.2, line 1, describes private drives as servicing not more than 10 lots or dwellings. And yet, Chapter 32 just says lots. So what are dwellings? We can go to a definition in 212, under definition of dwellings, and it's clear. If a dwelling and a lot are not the same thing.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So again, I want to come back to the question of what are we proposing? So we've got private driveways, which you're not going to mess with because there's no standards there to mess with anyway. Then we've got private drives, which have the 50-foot right-of-way, and it's no more than 10 lots. And then we have private roads, which are also 50 feet, which serve a minimum of 11 lots or more. Are we trying to change both private drives and private roads, or just private drives?
I don't think it's been proposed or made a motion yet. My personal thought is.
Because there's a lot of people in here, I mean, I'm looking at many of the same faces that I saw back in the Johns Marine issue, and I think that was a private road, not a private drive, is that correct? That they came to the BZA for?
I don't remember.
Can I make a clarification?
Isn't that a road? Yeah, it was a road, yeah.
I remember the BZA gave the variance, but I don't remember what it
So,
was.
I mean, if we're just talking private drives, maybe that's not something they would be so concerned with, but, I mean, they're concerned if we're gonna change private roads.
So my personal thought is that one, we have a 4 to 10, and that definitely needs to be dealt with. I don't think, as it was said, that from on private property, that the county should be dictating it, and I really don't think the county should be taking it over and saying, but we want it, even though there's not been shown a need for safety or anything like that. We have also seen in some of these
Right, but-
developments where there's more than 10 homes
Private roads
on
or
a private drive.
what are we talking about? What's
So-
on the table?
So I'm suggesting, that's what I'm saying, is under private roads, I don't think that it should stop at 11. Either we change and give another arbitrary number, or we allow it for that as well, because there are tons of roads that are private that have been perfectly serviced by the fire that are over 10 homes. Now, should it be 2,000 homes? You'd have to ask Kiwi Key. I mean, that's an area that is all private roads, and that they maintain it themselves, and they do a great job with it. But they clearly haven't had issue with a fire truck being able to put out a fire, to my knowledge.
So, Mr. Nix, what you was asking is, why did I bring this up? So when I got on this board, my primary reason was to go through all the ordinances and look in areas where either it's just it's easier for the bureaucrat to make the same change across the board, or maybe it was just, they didn't realize what they was doing when they made the change in one area and it affected another area, another personal property rights. So my goal is to go through all these ordinances and look everywhere where government has overstepped. Because to me, for so long, the citizens have become servants of the government instead of the other way around. We should not ask the people for any more of their property than what we can use and than what we're going to use. Once we start stepping outside of that and start throwing other variables in there, leave things open to opinions, we're now infringing upon their property rights. We're infringing upon their rights. We're infringing on the very thing that made us who we are. The thing that our founding fathers were so adamant about us protecting was these rights. So I have no problem using the studies that are out there and putting them forth, saying this is what we need to ensure that we can fight fires. I do have a problem when we come in and we say I need 15 feet to either side, without a real good justification. I mean, we can always come up with what ifs. But the question is, if that was so, then it would be in the document that restricts it. And it's not. So when looking at this ordinance, I realized a huge overreach. You realized how it was restricting a lot of people. And there was some questions I was going to answer here. One person was talking about the kids in school. Well, I tell you what, if we continue to make this a community that does not have affordable housing, a county that does not have affordable housing, that number's gonna continue to drop. Because the only people that are gonna move here are gonna be the ones that can afford to live here, to buy that limited supply of land. And the families that had land, such as my family, for multiple generations, are not gonna be able to allow their children to live on that property because they're restricted by road width. The BZA is a gamble. You're rolling the dice. And my liberties should not be granted by the BZA. I should know and be free on my property. The government should reside within its limitations, just like the federal government should reside within its constitution. And the constitution's there to control the government. These documents, the IFC, is to control that portion of it. The building codes is to control that portion of it. No, I don't agree with all the building codes. But when we start going even outside of that and grasping at additional things, we're overstepping our bounds. So to answer your question, the reason I brought this up has nothing to do with anything other than an overreach by a governing body, whether it was easier for them to do it across the board, or whether it was just they didn't realize what they was doing. That's what I'm trying to change. And I do agree with the last young man that got up here and spoke. We do need different regulations depending upon what it is. Because a subdivision will have the possibility of being sold. And now you put these people in a bind. But how do you really divide that off is the discussion we're having. How do you determine what is a subdivision and what's a family's property? And that's the whole reason we brought the topic up. That's the whole reason I brought a lot of people forward. I do not believe, I know one person said we need to add restrictions. And that's where we get at. Everybody looks at the government for the solution. And that's how we got here today. The government has infringed so much in our lives to where we're not as free as we were even 20 years ago. To give you a little story, and I'll make it quick.
What's on the table?
Huh?
What's on the table? Private drives, private roads, or both?
I'd say both.
I'm
Okay.
getting there.
That's what I
I'm
wanna
getting
hear.
there.
That's my question.
I'm getting there. When I went off in service and I came back 6 years later, my family had a sawmill. I'd come home on extended leave and cut lumber. Guess what my surprise was when I got back? When I first left, I could build a home with that rough cut lumber. When I got back, I could not. I live today in a home that was built in 1931. Guess what it was built out of? Rough cut lumber. Just in that little length of time, that's the freedoms being taken away. So what am I proposing? I'm proposing every road that's not a public road.
So, and are we talking about right-of-way?
I'm talking about the minimum requirements. Why should we request more of the citizens than what the minimum requirements are? Why should we step outside of those bounds? He's got a question.
So just based on what you just said earlier about you agreed with one of the other speakers that said that subdivisions may need some other considerations. So what's your proposal with private roads and subdivisions as it applies right now?
That's something we need to discuss, and we need to come up with a solution for it, because that's the other thing is, I do agree that we've got to be careful, because it's not like it used to be. It's not where the realtors now live amongst us, the developers now live amongst us. A lot of them are coming out of Texas, coming out of Georgia, all these other places coming in, and they're doing everything they can to get the return on investment, as much return on investment as they can. The problem we're gonna have is you can't treat one different than the other, and a lot of people don't understand that. And that creates the dilemma. So if you start restricting one, now you're restricting the other, because you cannot treat them different in that sense.
Well, not only that, but an investor is a property owner, just like a private property owner is a property owner.
Right, you can't treat one different than the other. And that's the dilemma. That's why government cannot solve all your problems.
The other thing along that line is we talk about developers, but the developer doesn't actually own the property until they can do with it what they want. It's the private owner that is being hurt by anything about this, because they can't maximize the dollars that they might otherwise be able to maximize in whatever that might be. But the developer never owns it until they get all their approvals and know that they can do something, and then they acquire the land. So what we're doing is we're hurting the property owner, whether that was the grandfather that invested so that he could have his kids go to college.
One more question, I'll quit bugging you guys. Have we benchmarked other counties to see how they define private driveways, private drives, private roads, and public roads, to see if they align with us and what their right-of-ways are, and if we want to align with them or not align with them?
We did several years ago look at a couple of years ago, and some of their private roads, for the ones that they had, some of them said yes, that they do the same 50-foot. And it seems like some said no.
If I may, do you, and this is a question for you, David.
No two wrongs don't make a right.
Well, that's where I'm going. Do you feel that we have moved in a more, direction of liberty or direction of restriction in South Carolina?
Restriction.
Okay. So it's, to me, it's not even a debate, because the only thing that's restricting us is the ability for the fire equipment to get there. And it tells us exactly what they need. Anything outside of that on a private road, private drive, private driveway is us overstepping our bounds.
So reading real quick on the private roads, it says must get an encroachment permit from SDDOT. That's a requirement already anyway. It says must be built to a minimum of 20-foot road surface, which is like a public road currently. Private roads must have vertical clearance of 13.5. Somebody said it was actually 13.6. Okay, 13.5, yeah, 13.5 gets it, which is just like a public road. Complies with current fire regulation and fire code. So if it's a subdivision, it automatically gets approval or not from the fire chief before that subdivision can go online. So they still have to meet certain standards that take place before, with regard to regulating a subdivision. Private drives and roads must allow 100 feet of sight distance for each 10 miles an hour of posted speed limit. That's not changed. And constructed to a certain depth of surface material.
Mr. Chairman, we don't post speed limits on dirt roads, do we? Kyle?
On public dirt roads, we do.
On public dirt roads? If there's an issue?
Yes, sir.
But for the most part, they don't have postings.
It's gotten fairly common. Yeah, no, not unless we have an issue.
Okay.
But say a gated subdivision, which would fall under private roads, they very well may post their own speed limit signs, and so this rule probably should apply. If they're gonna post a speed limit for their private behind the gates, there should probably be some site rules that apply. The last thing is that, again, if it's behind a gate, consumer protections would suggest that we do regulate certain depths of surface material. Because from a subdivision standpoint, as a realtor, a consumer sees, boy, that's a nice fresh asphalt, but they don't know that's only an inch thick. And by the time the third construction truck rolls in there, now that asphalt's broken up and their investment was a wrong investment. So I do think that there needs to be standards for road construction, hard packed surface, depth type stuff. I do think that the 50-foot right-of-way on drives and the 50-foot right-of-way on roads should be eliminated or reduced. Yes, sir.
All right, now that we know what's on the table, can we get Kyle and the fire chief back up to give us their opinion on the safety matter or practical matters regarding that? I mean, I don't know that they knew what was on the table when we had our discussion. Now they know what's on the table. So I'd like to hear their perspective now that they know what's on the table.
Fair. I'll second.
Good.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. I couldn't tell. Was it unanimous?
I was looking down.
All those that signify by saying aye.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
It's not a high hill.
Kyle Rosenbridge again. So the question on is, what do I think about limiting the right of way or removing it to just the surface?
Yeah, I mean,
Private roads.
yeah,
So-
private drives and private roads.
So, and I'm not trying to be political, but you would be taking away people's rights to maintain their road if you take it away from a private road. If you take it away from a private drive
You're giving them the rights to completely maintain
on their property. But if
And you're
you
taking
have
it
a
away from the
subdivision-
county.
No.
Well, you're
County
taking,
has
you're
none.
taking the authority
County
away
has
from the
none.
county.
Please don't put that on
County
me.
has none.
Yeah, county has none. So if you subdivide that property,
But it's in the right of way is in the ordinance right now, so the county can do something, can't they?
No.
Then there's no reason for it to be there. Anyway,
so you go to court. If you have no access, no instrument to access your property, then anybody can throw a gate up. And you can't go and take it down on their property if it goes to the center line of the road.
Can I stop you real quick, because it is a subject matter of importance? Putting a gate up, having a right of ingress or egress is a right given to you from your deed, not a right given by ordinance of the county. Is that a correct statement?
Perhaps.
So in other words, I would have a deed of access of ingress and egress to own that property.
It really is gonna depend, another legal answer, but everyone's gonna be different, and I think what Kyle's getting to, it's gonna flow down the stream. So if you just have, say, we embedded it into the law that you have a 20-foot traveling surface right away, everything else is free game. I think what Kyle's saying is, person at the first house on the left, does something with what would have been the right-of-way where they could have done utilities, could have done maintenance, could have had a drainage ditch. They do something in there because they have the freedom to do whatever they want. We don't live in a vacuum. That's gonna affect the folks down the road because generally you have that much right-of-way that's reserved and maintained, and of course utilities is a secondary option. So I think, if I'm hearing you right, there's always a flow down the road that he deals with. I think
So
on
I've
a
got a question to that. So you say it flows down the road. So let's say we made the 20-foot hard pack. That's what's gotta be maintained by those property owners as you're going down through there, that 20-foot by 13 and a half. They've gotta maintain it. So if they put something in what was originally considered the right-of-way off of that 20-foot hard pack, how is it going to affect the property owners that's what I'm not understanding. How is that gonna affect property owners on down the road?
That's real easy.
drainage ditches.
If you put a drainage ditch in and you block that drainage ditch from Joe Blow down the road, then you've affected.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot block the flow of water. Drainage ditches, anything like that.
Oh, you can't, navigable water, you'll get into issues.
Well, I don't think you can turn water onto another property.
No, that would affect a trespass if you did that. Now, however, riparian rights on flows down little creeks and drainage ditches are litigated all the time because it's not clear if you're stopping water, if you're redirecting the water or something like that. It's very
Right.
fact specific. But yes, I mean, as a general principle, there are rights to that water flow that are gonna go downstream.
So
we
as long as I'm sorry.
We have coverages in other ordinance that are covering that. I mean, I know we can't let water flow onto another property.
Yeah, I think
No,
we're reaching out into state law and even federal law.
Generally, even if you block water there, it's still gonna flow to the same property. It's just gonna take the road with it.
And that's where they would be violating and damaging that
Well,
road top.
water comment, sorry.
No.
So, water in its natural form flowing over the ground or whatever else, even if there's a road in the way, when you channelize it, it's when it becomes a problem. And that's more the problem now. If it goes back, reverts back to what it was before, just has a road in the way and goes over the top of that road, it's worse to put a pipe in on somebody than it is to just let the water flow as it was before, kind of deal. So, you're basically taking away somebody's right to maintain their road as it is, and water's the death knell of a road, and trees are, always of a concern as far as somebody hitting something or whatever it may be, along the road. Now, if you just talking about to 20 feet and doing 13 and a half foot up or whatever else, then that would give people in and out per se, to their house. But, when you get into the situation of not being able to maintain a road, and you can sit there and slap a fence right up against the side of it and that kind of stuff, then, and we all, I'm sure y'all all know, or most of y'all know, or whatever else, fence is like, that's the place for things to grow. And we have tons of road that's where it does grow, and that's where it comes out. And those are the things you get into, when you got somebody trying to sit there and spray down somebody's fence line, and then it gets onto their own property. You're trying to maintain a road with absolutely no room to do it.
Who's you?
The people living on the road.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, the county having right-of-ways on each side of the road allows anybody on that road
No.
to maintain it?
This is a private road right of way given to the people that live on the road.
No, I'm not saying the
has
county
nothing-
does it.
The county doesn't take any of this. This is not a public right of way. This is not public. This is just for the folks, whoever gets the rights assigned to this road are the only people that can do anything with the road.
So Kyle, I got a question.
Yeah.
So this is a private road, county does not maintain it.
Right.
Even with the 50-foot right-of-way right now, I'm sure you get calls to come out and cut things that are hanging out into the tree. I know you can't do it, but I'm sure you get these calls about these private roads that have encroachment of, foliage and things like
Yeah.
that into it.
So it's mostly the catastrophic things. Mostly it's when it falls into a state of disrepair.
Okay.
Is when we get calls. But yes, sir, we do.
So
A lot.
even, what I'm trying to get across, even with the 50-foot right-of-way we have now, I can take you down plenty of roads that have issues. And what I'm saying is, the responsibility is to maintain the hardtop and the clearance. And that's the responsibility of each property owner that has property along that road. How do we enforce that? Now.
So on private roads, there's supposed to be, it's required that you have a HOA or something along those lines that would be the ones that are responsible for the maintenance of the road.
But there's a lot of private roads that
Yeah, no, there's a ton.
that
I mean,
don't have
Harper-
it. So how do we
Harper's
enforce,
Ridge, that'd be
how
the
do we
first one I go
enforce that right now?
We don't, fire marshals, may go out there to the property or that kind of thing, but as far as enforcement goes, we don't.
So that's a question for the fire marshal.
Yes, that would be a question for
Mr. Haney, as a point, probably most of those roads were by prescriptive easement. I don't know what the percentage of roads by prescriptive easement are in the county, but it's 80%.
That or they have right of way, but it was before, when HOA was required or the HOA's gone defunct or whatever it may be. There's only so far you can carry somebody down the road kind of thing, I guess, so to
Yeah,
speak.
but my question is, how do we, even the ones that have the 50-foot right-of-way built into them? Well, I think some of the pictures we've seen tonight is a good example. How do we enforce if that property owner's not gonna cut them trees back?
They tell me. They'd ring me up and council would have an executive session, they can get sued if they violate an ordinance.
No, I think he's asking about private. So
Private
if
would be the
there's
same
something in
thing.
the way,
So privates will be the same thing.
if there's
it's a
something in the way
violation
of a
of county
fire truck,
ordinance.
they would call us.
Right, but that's to take care of the emergency at hand.
Yes, the emergency
But what
at
I'm
hand.
talking about is if the, and I know the fire department rides around periodically and.
Yes.
So they get familiar with the roads and everything else.
Did you hear what Mr. Root said?
I did. So what I'm saying is, we've already got a mechanism in place to keep that rectangle clear. So whether we keep that, whether we have the 50-foot right-of-way or the 20-foot right-of-way, it doesn't matter as long as they have the ability to transfer through. But anyway, I'll let you finish up.
I got a question.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, private roads,
For what it stated, yeah.
subdivisions, okay, and private driveways, like period. That's the two separations right there. Private roads, I say, has to have requirements, because it is a private road, and it's for subdivision. Now, is driveway, private driveway? No, it shouldn't have to have the requirements. I mean, that's where I see a division. If it's a private road, yes, you need your right of way, because it's supplying a subdivision.
So there's three right now, that you got driveways, which is 1 to 3, drives, which are 4 to 10, and then roads, which are 11 or more. That's the three divisions that you have. Now, if y'all want us to take a look and see, what can be limited or what can be cut down as far as that space goes or whatever else, I mean, we'd be happy to look at that, or road classifications or whatever it may be.
Well, I think you make a good point, though.
The question is 11 the number? Or is 20 the number? Or is 50 the number?
Right.
The 11, I'm not sure where that came from, or if that's the right break point.
Well, it's about 15 for these people, so.
Yeah. Well, my question is, I don't see how we're regulating it. I mean, until it becomes out into the roadway, the travel, what do you call it?
The public way?
Actually where you drive, what do you call that? The
Oh,
hardback.
travel way, sorry.
Travel way,
Yeah.
yes. Really, nothing's gonna be said until something gets out in the travel way, and then the only, solution then is through the county, basically going after them with a lawsuit. So does it matter at that point whether it's 15-foot of right-of-way or 2-foot right-of-way? It doesn't make a difference. Because either way, we're not enforcing, according to what I'm hearing, we're not enforcing what's growing in that 15-foot. We're only enforcing when it reaches out and becomes a danger to the traveler or the traffic.
So like even if David reaches out and it's a water problem, that water problem may not be handled in that. So the people that may be getting, fined or whatever it may be, may not have the ability to go and fix the pipe that's completely collapsed and taking the road out. And I mean, it happens. We had one a day ago. And half the road's undermined.
How do you handle it in, say, Kiwi Key, a gated community, big gated community with all private roads?
How do we handle it?
Y'all, I'm assuming you don't handle it, that Kiwi Key would handle it.
Yeah.
The reason I say it that way is because we're talking about the requirement, the minimum requirement. Anybody can still say, I'm doing 20 homes, I'm gonna do a 50-foot because I'm eventually gonna wanna turn it over to the county.
Right.
There's nothing that says they have to not do a right-of-way at any point. We're just saying that under a private road, it gives the private individual a determination of what they want to do with their private property. If they want to develop it, they would have the right to do a 50-foot right-of-way if they wanted.
If I can go on the personal side, sorry, but I live in a private subdivision on private roads and whatever else. We pay our dues and we maintain the roads and all that other stuff. There's a property owner to the one side of it that has not kept the pipe cleaned out. We don't have any right of way to get there. It's a big pond, steam, all that other stuff that comes down in there and all that other stuff, but we don't have the right to fix it. Now, eventually, it could take the road out, and I'm not saying, woe is me or whatever else, but it'll flood the road. It won't allow water to go into the pond, out the deeper pipe that's down in the ravine or down in the ditch. It's coming up into the road, going through a going into a catch basin, going back out another pipe because it's flooding the road, but we don't have the right to do anything. We have a 50-foot right of way.
So that's a great example then. Could you do that in 5 feet? Could you do that in 10, or could you do that in 15? Fix your problem.
Nobody knows where the end of the pipe is now. So
So,
we have to have permission from that property owner to get on their property because we can't, private property, you can't get out there and. just
so
do
you
whatever
stated
want.
you had a 50-foot right-of-way.
Mhm.
So he's got a 50-foot right-of-way and still has a water problem.
Yes.
So what we're talking about wouldn't help that necessarily, unfortunately.
And that's-
Private road.
So if we're having that problem on a 50-foot road, and I'm not trying to tell y'all where to go as far as the widths go or anything else like that, but it stands to reason that if you take the right of way away, you've got more instances of this, not less. This is a kind of again, not trying to be woe is me or anything like that, but this is like a worst case scenario kind of, but it happens. Like, it happens. I can take you to Port Bass where there's pipes 40 foot deep in the ground, and how are we gonna get to them? What are we gonna do? Kind of a deal. And the old oil barrels that they used to build Port Bass,
Fortunately, Port Bass would not be allowed anymore in this county
So,
under a bunch of different ordinances.
the curve, whenever you sit there and start taking away, you're bringing way more people under the curve of what could happen,
Right.
sort of a thing. And again, I'm not directing you or whatever else. I have no dog in this fight. All I'm saying is, for me, and this is what we do for a living, like 50 feet is still not a lot for us to handle the situations we get into. And there's times that I still have to get easements from outside property owners to be able to go and fix something that's our road.
But here's what I'm hearing is, and I'm just gonna be blunt,
Yeah, go ahead.
is we do not trust the property owners to do the right thing, to ensure that they are not harming their neighbor, to ensure that they are maintaining the road, the travel way, to ensure that they are not creating an obstacle that would be harmful to the neighbor. That's what I'm saying, hearing is,
Yeah.
we're trying to govern these individuals and their private property.
And
Because
unfortunately,
we don't trust
Yeah.
that they're gonna do the right thing.
so unfortunately, I'm a little jaded.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of good data on that.
Cause I'm taking those calls. So the question is, for any of us or anybody that's doing this kind of work or whatever it may be, is what's the minimum you would accept? What road would you buy off of?
And that's a good point.
That had,
That's a very good
how
point.
much right of way would you require? And then how much right of way would the majority require? I mean, it's the constituents require, sorry, not the majority, the constituents require.
So
to
that's a
buy.
good point, and that's another key factor in, we're talking about, slowing down development in the county. Well, a developer's not gonna buy and try to develop a road that's restricted like, some of these roads that we've taken over. I mean, Galloway Road's a good one.
Yeah.
You got right of way all the way up to a certain point, and then you got prescriptive easements.
Yes, sir.
And in some parts in that prescriptive easement, your telephone pole to
Yeah.
culvert's about less than 10 foot.
Yep.
So that's a good example of how this actually can benefit the county and property owners by implementing
It
this.
could. Well, and it's the same way, some of those folks that are on the screen or whatever else that had 20-foot, 25-foot accesses, that may be why they did it, to not allow it. They may not have wanted that development around them. They may sold it as 25 feet and said, here's what you're getting. You ain't getting no more because we don't want the development coming in behind us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Did we want Mr. Smith to come back up? Did you have questions for him as well?
Well, he was gonna tell us what he thought.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just for clarity, and like Mr. Smith, I'm a property owner in Oconee County, and I think that situation is a driveway. You're talking about public roads. I think I agree with Kyle, when you got subdivisions and private driveways, you got two different things. And, you know, if a citizen decides, or Mr. Smith decides to let his 3 children build on his property on their driveway, and there's not access for the emergency services, then Mr. Smith's gonna accept that responsibility that we can't get in there. But when you allow developers to come in and build 4 homes, or 5 homes, or 8 homes on a roadway, and now we can't access the public, that's a problem. The roadway surface is the surface, but we have to operate off the side of that. That's my only concern with the right-of-way, is what can be allowed in that right-of-way that could prevent us from being able to do our jobs. But I agree, I'm not here saying the government needs to be doing no more than what they should be doing. But as the fire chief for Oconee County, that's sworn to protect the citizens' lives and property, that's my concern, to be able to, we can access that. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Any questions there?
No, I'll say that one.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if y'all were gonna make a proposal or a motion, but I think Chief Smith's point, Mr. Smith's point, underscore that, what I brought up at the beginning, the private driveways versus private drives that the planning committee wanted y'all to look at. I don't think you can divorce it from this issue and toss in setbacks also, which are very relevant if you're gonna narrow the required right-of-way. And we're missing the fellow in that chair who does it daily. So I'm just put out maybe a recommendation to congeal these issues together for the next meeting, and bring all 3 of them in.
I do have a question for you, Mr. Root.
Yes, sir.
So there's a lot of discussion in this room about treating a 4-home subdivision different than a 4-home farm.
Yes.
Can't do it.
Yeah, there are issues with that. So you'd have to find a way to make it so that classes are dissimilar, and you can. You know, family transfers for subdivisions, those have passed litmus tests that you can have a family division and not have to go through the full rigmarole, and those are okay. This is a little bit different, but so you'd have to come up with a means to, within the legislative history, say why we are gonna treat this class of persons, a developer from Utah, differently than someone who's, you know, born and raised in Oconee County and wants to have their farm split up. Because they're essentially 2 people who are subdividing the same class, so you'd have to divide it. It's not that you can't do it, but it would take some finesse in drafting.
And it's not necessarily homes, it's dwellings.
Right, dwellings.
It's true too.
So the question is, are we making a motion tonight, or are we make to do something with the right-of-way, or are we making a motion to table this or to push it to the next meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to table this to the next meeting. James will be here. We can discuss what the Planning Economic Development Committee wants us to talk about. It seems to dovetail with this. Otherwise, we make a decision, then we may have to come back and amend it later. So we've been here almost 2.5 hours. I think everybody's tired. And I think we table it to the next meeting.
Motion to delay it to the next meeting. Tabling it is taking it off the books.
So,
I don't delay.
so we are delaying it. Do you want to amend that motion?
I will amend it to delay. Thank you.
Second.
And that is until the next meeting? Is that the way we understand it? Motion to delay till the next meeting, seconded motion to delay. Is there any discussion regarding that? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Done.